On the operate, I room no seed biting, never bites. Fast water swimming in the girls down in the guys. Spin now see black, you right, by. OMG, Mac 4, Robin C, Gallon Neck Night. Hot stove, soft, Robin C, bringing the high. EC's alive, plus trust under those in my city life. Right? Queens got the dreams united. On the rag, Trump out, bring me stack. Night and under that chocolate flag. Smack that home out the park. Fuck the deafening black. Side game time, Robin CP, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remains cheer, in the orange we unite. Match forever, I'm fit to be in sight. Match bright and high, energy like a live wire. Queen City chance, passion never tires. Grand slam dreams and paces focus fast. Holding it steady cause we know we gonna last. We the kings of the field, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remain cheer, in the orange we unite. Match forever, I'm 50 in sight. All hearts ignite like NYC stars. Robin CP, guiding even through scars. Queens got the glow, city anthem flows.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to episode 24 of the Mets Hot Stove Show, right here on the channel and on X as well. Hopefully, everybody is enjoying their almost end of the week, and we're basically a week into the new year already, and we're still figuring out what the Mets roster will be for the 2025 season. Basically, a little over a month until pitchers and catchers report, and we have a lot to talk about, as there has been some news coming out of what the Mets might be doing as to some pivot points when it comes to their roster in regards to bullpen, rotation, outfield, and possibly some infield here. And we'll get started in a second, and let's say what up to my guy, Chris. What's up, buddy?
What up, Rob? Salute to the chat. Listen, it's cold outside, man. I got to have my winter hat on even indoors. It's cold outside. But you know what? News. I want action. Us Mets fans want action. And unfortunately, we don't have much action outside of the arbitration settlements that the Mets were able to reach in terms of agreements with guys like Paul Blackburn and all the way down the list, Luis Torrens, etc. But we do have a jam-packed show for you all. Obviously, the topics and that beautiful, vibrant topics bar right there with Tanner Scott, Luis Arraez. We'll probably talk about Anthony Santander. We'll definitely talk about Pete Alonso, as I just dropped the Pete Alonso video and a little bit of an update on my channel about 2 hours ago. Check that out as well. Appreciate everyone being here again. Smashing those thumbs up buttons. Subscribe to the channel. I just surpassed 1,900 on my way to 2,000 subs on the channel. I definitely appreciate everybody's support. It means a lot. I try to interact with anybody and everybody that takes the time out of their day to watch the content that we put on the channel. So it means a lot. Keep rocking with us. We'll be here with you all off season. And I see some beautiful banners that Rob's cooking up for our pregame shows. Once we get in season, we'll have a lot of postgame content too. So you know where to go. We got you all covered.
There you go. And look, all of these topics are a what if we do this? What if we do that? Because these are all moves that could, look, a lot of fans might be happy with it. A lot of fans might be disappointed because of the other direction the Mets might go. But in the overall concept of these topics and the players we're talking about, it might be a pretty damn good roster. It might be better than expected in regards to what people did expect going into the offseason. Soto, Alonso, and that was our big bats, and then the rest of the lineup, and then maybe some pitching. But with topic number one, with the Mets meeting with Tanner Scott, and that came out of nowhere, right? And we do wonder, if you're not going to go all out for starting pitching, why not just get an elite bullpen? And it kind of counteracts the flaws or the possible flaws of the rotation. And Tanner Scott is a no-brainer, right? We talked about how we didn't think it was possible, but every Met fan would say, get Tanner Scott. It makes so much sense. Now, we know what he's looking for. He's looking around Diaz money, closer money, and I wonder if the Mets are willing to do that, because it's only like a 3 or 4 year deal and it's not a 6, 7, 8 year deal that you would have to give a starter. I wonder if David Stearns and the Mets are more willing to do that, and that's why it's come up and it's come out. Whoever leaked it, I'm assuming the Mets were okay with this getting leaked out because this is something that makes a lot of sense. We talked about the bullpen already, Chris, right? We got Buto, we got Nunez, we got Garrett, we got Diaz. You add Tanner Scott, who is a closer, who would be basically a setup man for Diaz, but again, you can interchange that whenever you want to. You also got the lefty in the bullpen as well. Like, that's something where you can just, you can jump off a little bit and be like, all right, if you get a Stanek, if you get a Robinson in this bullpen, or you get one of those two in a long man, now you're talking about a really damn good bullpen with a starting rotation that is questionable. I think we can all agree on that. They could be solid. They could be, above average, which if you got an elite bullpen, you can deal with that throughout the season, especially if you're going to have a possible, with the Juan Soto in the lineup and maybe a couple more bats that we'll talk about a little bit later. But Tanner Scott's the guy to get. At this point, I know the rotation ain't happening. Roki Sasaki is probably out of the question unless he picks us. But let's say we don't get him. Maybe the Mets are pivoting with the meeting with Tanner Scott, knowing that Roki Sasaki isn't good. The Mets aren't going to be one of these finalists to choose from, and that's why they're pivoting to elite bullpen status instead of let's get Roki Sasaki. So what are your thoughts when it comes to Tanner Scott and the meeting the Mets had? Do you think it's a direct cause of what's going on with the Sasaki situation behind the scenes, or do you think the Mets were always in on Scott regardless of what happens with Sasaki?
I think that they were always, listen, I will say this. I've been very adamant and I can't backtrack in what I said about Tanner Scott in the fact that if Tanner Scott wanted and he still might want a long-term deal, then the Mets would be out on him. Now, I think the actual report that got out during that meeting with the Mets and Tanner Scott is the fact that if Tanner Scott, who is 29 going on 30 years old, just posted a season with an ERA of 1.75, a whip of 1.13. Doesn't matter how you cut it, lefty, righty, doesn't matter. He is one of the best bullpen arms in the entire league. I was very adamant if he was going to remain in the market for a 4 to 5 year deal, which he is certainly in line for given the age and given the success that he's had over the past 2 seasons, then that would probably put the Mets out because again, you have Edwin Diaz. That's closer money for a 4 or 5 year deal worth anywhere between $16 to $17 million for Tanner Scott. If he is willing to take a shorter term deal and the Mets have a 1-2 punch in the back end of the bullpen, 8th and 9th inning of Tanner Scott from the left side and then Edwin Diaz from the right-handed side, that would send shivers down my spine, Rob. That would absolutely send shivers down my spine. That would be the best, hands down, 8th and 9th inning duo in the entire league. I don't care what other combination you want to throw out there. That would be the best. And then you're talking about moving down Daniel Nunez and Reed Garrett to 6th and 7th inning roles. That is phenomenal. I am still a little skeptical. I don't want to get too ahead of myself in terms of Tanner Scott actually taking a short-term deal. Again, he's been majestic over the past 2 seasons in both 2023 and 2024. So why would he want to sort of short himself on this big time contract? And we know that relievers get a very small margin in their career to take home a huge payday. Other than that, it's basically 1 to 2 year deals, no matter what age you are. I don't know if I can see that happening, but the fact that they are willing to meet with Tanner Scott at the bare minimum and to show us that they are willing to spend top dollar for any reliever on the market, right? Whether it's a 1 year deal or a 3 year deal, whether it's AJ Minter, whether it's Tanner Scott, David Robertson, whoever else have you, that is a great sign because again, the one way that you can surefire cover up some of the weaknesses right, that you might have in this rotation that we've been questioning over the past couple of weeks. And if Roki Sasaki is not coming to Queens to strengthen that rotation, is by building an elite bullpen. And the Mets in their core right now, the bullpen with the guys that we just named, including Jose Buto, and if you want to toss in a guy like Sean Reed Foley, that's a pretty good core to start out with. It would go into the elite category if you add Tanner Scott. So I'm really excited. Am I still getting my hopes up? I can't because, again, Robin, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Tanner Scott taking a 1 or 2 year deal versus a 4 to 5 year deal doesn't really seem appealing. He can have the best of both worlds and taking a 3-year deal with an opt out after the first. Maybe he still is able to cash in on a long-term deal if he kills it in a Mets uniform in year 1. I'm still a little bit skeptical, but if this doesn't excite you as a Mets fan, I don't know what else will.
Well, it does excite me, but here's why I think the Mets are willing to go to a 4-year contract. And the reason why I'm saying it, I just happen to pull up Edwin Diaz's contract situation right now. After this year, he has an opt-out. All right. I don't know if anybody noticed that or not, but he does.
Club or player?
So that's a great question. Let me just double check. It just says opt-out available. So I'm assuming it's a player option. Because 2028 there's a club option. So I'm assuming that's the player option. So he's got a couple more years in his deal, but he has an opt-out in 2026. So I do wonder if the Mets are looking at that and saying, would he opt out? Which I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to get much more on the market. But if the Mets are looking at that, right, and saying, all right, there's a possibility, after the 2026 season, Diaz can opt out for more money, and the Mets still have Tanner Scott for 2 more years or 3 more years. I wonder if they're looking at that. But here's why I think they're willing to do it, because why sit down and have a meeting with Tanner Scott if you're going to try to give him a 2-year deal when he's probably looking for 4, or give him a 3-year deal with an opt-out? I just don't see him doing that. I think you're just wasting your time. And the way David Stearns works with a bullpen, and I know he likes to take guys off of everywhere and, try to use the lab as fixes certain guys. I think he realizes that a 4-year deal for a reliever goes a lot further than a 7-year deal for a starting pitcher. And I think with the luxury of having the money that he can use for the bullpen, I think he'd be willing to do it because, again, it is only a 4-year deal. Regardless if it's 18, 19, 17, $20 million, it's only 4 years. And it doesn't handcuff you for the foreseeable future. And by the time Vientos or whoever else might become, young stars on your team or young, really damn good players who are looking for contracts, you can be able to do that. I know Steve Cohen's money is endless, but it is a business. You got to have a budget at some point. I think the best route to go, and I think the Mets are finally, I'm not saying finally realizing this, I think this was their plan all along. I think they were hoping for Sasaki, seeing if it happened. If you get Sasaki, you only got to pay a couple $1 million. Great. It's easy. Not a ton of money for a guy that can be a potential, great pitcher, ace of the staff, and then work your way from there. But I think because of the continued reports we're hearing that the Mets might not even be the finalist for Sasaki, I think the Mets are like, all right, you know what? We gotta have a better bullpen. You can't go with Shomanai and Kodai Senga and tell fans that 2025 is the year to go. And you might get Stanek, you might get an AJ Minter or another lefty, to fill out the bullpen. But that doesn't make you good enough. Like, you can bring in Santander, you can bring in Alonso or Luis Arraez or a combination of those guys. I don't want to score 7.5 runs per game and worry about losing games 8-7. Like I talked about that on How Many Hot Stoves. I don't think the starting rotation is going to be good enough. At least you can shorten the game with a very damn good bullpen. And we've seen it throughout baseball where if you have a really good bullpen, it kind of cuts away or at least covers the problems that the rotation probably is going to have. I think Shomanai is going to be fine. I have no clue what Kodai Senga is going to be. I'm not sure about David Peterson or Montaz or Clay Holmes. It's too many question marks for me. If you could solidify a bullpen that can be guarded with Tanner Scott and Edwin Diaz and the names we mentioned, like you can shorten the game to 5 innings every night, maybe 6 on a given night, because you'll always have a closer every single day with Tanner Scott and Edwin Diaz. You're not going to have to worry about that. So if you can shorten the game to 5-6 innings and then go to your better part of your team in the bullpen, you got a great way of winning games. And then if the starting pitching figures it out, great. When the bullpen goes through a rough stretch, which all bullpens go through a rough stretch, your starting pitching will pick up. And I think, and at least by the time the bullpen is saving our asses early on in the season, if the rotation is really struggling, you have time to figure things out, getting towards the trade deadline if you need starting pitching. I think you don't need to stay afloat, but you can win games with an elite bullpen and a really good offense. The starting pitching is not going to completely make or break you in that aspect. The problem with the Mets last year was the pitching was trying to find, the rotation was trying to find it last year early on, and the bullpen was basically saving the offense and the rotation. At least at this point, you feel like the offense can be really good, can score runs, can win ball games, but if the bullpen can win you enough ball games early on while the rotation kind of establishes themselves, now you got something talking here. And I think the Mets will be willing to go 4 years, because I don't think the 4 years is that much of an issue to them, to be quite honest, Chris. I mean, you can still give it an opt-out after the first year, and just to give a little incentive, like if he has a great year again, you go back on the market. And we'll see how that goes. But who cares about 2026 at this point, Chris?
So two things. One is a statement in the fact that the only reason why I'm sort of skeptical of the Mets doing that is not because Steve Cohen doesn't have the money or he's not willing to do that. When's the actual last time that we've seen? And shout out my guy John Rossi in the chat. He's been absolutely telling me this from the start. And I think we all know this already about David Stearns, but it has to be reiterated. When's the last time we've seen him give out that type of contract for a reliever? I haven't seen it. Not even and the Brewers are.
But it's hard to do that because last offseason was an evaluation year. There was no need for him to spend a long-term deal on a bullpen arm. And in Milwaukee, he never had the luxury. He had to choose probably with the minimal amount of budget in Milwaukee, and he had to use it, and not all the times he would use it for the bullpen because he couldn't. And he would just have to find guys from the minors or from waivers or sign a 1-year type of guy. That's what he had to do in Milwaukee because there was no budget for him to work with. We're looking at his past and making it out to be like, oh, well, he didn't do it then. And last year was an evaluation year. You got to put this year and the success the Mets had out of your head, because the 2023 offseason going into 2024 was supposed to be an evaluation year of many players, and we knew the Mets weren't going to spend money. So it's hard to evaluate Stearns and what he believes in when he has the resources to do it, because if he signs Tanner Scott to a 4-year deal tomorrow, that changes the whole outlook on what David Stearns has done in his career, because he's never had a budget like this before, or a budget at all. So I think it's hard to say, why would he give out a 4-year deal, or he never done it before. It's hard to evaluate that. Again, I want to wait and see if he does it. If he does it, now we have a whole different topic to talk about when it comes to David Stearns, because he's not afraid to do it then. But until he does it, the same thing when it goes for trading prospects, until he does it, can you believe it?
Well, you didn't believe that he would trade prospects for a starting pitcher, and he hasn't, but he has traded prospects for other big name position players in his career, aka
Correct.
Willie Adames when he was in Milwaukee. So
Sure.
again, right? So, but the same thing could be said about the rotation this year. He's never spent big time because he hasn't really had to, first off. But again, he really hasn't done it for a big name starting pitcher. And he also, in this year to go for it, we've been complaining that he hasn't done it so far. So it kind of goes hand in hand with some
with the
trends for
starting
David
with
Stearns.
the starting pitching, yeah, absolutely. Like I just think he just doesn't believe giving long-term deals to starting pitching. And again, that might not be our philosophy. The way we believe that we should go about running an organization, right? I think you need one ace. I think you can spend big on one ace. He doesn't believe in that. That's okay. But you also have to. You can't. You can't low budget or be. I'm not going to say cheap because that's not the right word. But be I guess mischievous with your rotation, but with your bullpen be the same way. You can't do both. Because if you do both, you're relying on one part of your roster heavily to pick up the slack. And that doesn't make sense for a team that got to the NLCS last year for game 6. You have to be better. And that's why I think he's gonna do more with the bullpen. And I think it just makes sense. I think if you can get Scott in here, I don't care. I think it's gonna be a 4-year deal wherever he goes. I think he's going to do it. Like, why bring Tanner Scott into a meeting if you're going to ask him to take 2 years or even 3 years with an opt out? I don't think he's going to do it. Like, you're just wasting your time. But I do agree. His philosophy with starting pitching is not long term deals. That is probably one proof that he didn't go after Fried, Burns, or again, he hasn't traded for a starter yet. He could still do that, but he's made his name trading for Christian Yelich, trading for Willie Adames. He's done that. So he's traded prospects in the past, but you got to remember, he already established himself as a GM with the Brewers. So he knew his farm system, right? He's had 1 year with this farm system. I don't know if he's still evaluating these guys. I don't think he should be at this point. At this point, you have a couple of years with these guys that you've seen statistically, and you had a year under your belt evaluating these guys. Just because the Mets had a good season doesn't mean you stop evaluating your farm system. So I think with him, I worry if he's going to do it because when it comes to the farm system. But when it comes to Tanner Scott, I think he knows what he's doing with the bullpen. And he knows how important bullpens are, as we got beat by bullpen in the NLCS, basically. So he knows how important it is. He's always had a good bullpen throughout his tenure running teams. I'm not going to worry about Stearns when it comes to the bullpen, regardless if he don't get Tanner Scott. He figure out ways to get good bullpen arms in here and have a successful bullpen. He just got, a bad luck of the draw last year. The majority of our good bullpen arms got hurt. And, he had to, come up with guys out of nowhere. Buto to the bullpen. Nunez had to come up from the minors, which ended up being beneficial for us. But, we know who we lost. We lost, Rayleigh. We lost Drew Smith. Those guys are actually pitching well for us prior to them getting hurt. So I'm not going to worry about him, even if we don't get Tanner Scott, because he's done it before over and over again with a budget and no budget. So I'm not worried about the bullpen. But I do think he would go the 4 years with Tanner Scott, because if you're never going to give a long-term deal, you're not going to win. I'm sorry to say that. Like, Juan Soto is a different story because we know Steve Cohen took care of that. David Stearns needs to realize that you don't have to penny pinch on every part of your roster. It doesn't work. As successful as he was going to the playoffs the majority of the time of Milwaukee, they did not win. And that's what I talk about, where everybody's like, oh, this guy's really smart. This guy's know what he's doing. Yeah, but you also have to win a World Series. You can't just make the playoffs and get lauded for that and act like everything's okay. You will be fired within 4 to 5 years if you don't make the playoffs. That's a fact. So he has to realize, longer term deals for certain players to make your team better, you have to bite the bullet at some point, because you can't.
Agree.
You can't do these these projects and in every part of your roster that are important and act like, well, if it works out, we'll win.
Well, the
Chris?
Brewers, yeah, the Brewers aren't going to win anything with their model. I'm very confident in
Yeah.
that. That's been established already, right?
Yeah.
But the point that I was going to try to go down to is, if this Tanner Scott signing comes to fruition, right? We're very far off in that actually happening. Just want to make sure everybody's aware. We're not acting as if this is a surefire thing. We can't act as if anything's a surefire thing with the New York Mets in this offseason, right? I mean, not even the New York Mets, but like there are a handful of teams around this league that haven't spent a single penny this offseason, the Padres being one of them, right? So there's a lot of unknowns around the league, not only with the New York Mets, but what I will also say and try to relate to this is that if Tanner Scott gets brought on, you can make the argument for either side. But I'm going to take the stance that if Tanner Scott does get signed, let's just say it is a 4-year deal. And let's say that I am wrong. And the Mets do extend a 4-year offer and they're able to secure Tanner Scott to be the setup guy to Edwin Diaz, right? That signifies to me that they are not moving Clay Holmes out of that rotation at all.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't have to at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like you would hope he does. I mean, the only way he ends up in the bullpen is if he's terrible in spring training. Like you would have to. You can't throw him as your fifth starter.
We've had this disagreement. I think they're going to give him a longer leash than you think in that rotation.
Well, all right. Put it this way. I guess I would deal with it going into the season if he's pitching bad in spring training because, again, Clay Holmes is supposed to be a setup man. You got Tanner Scott. Clay Holmes is a seventh inning guy, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But let's say Clay Holmes does start the season in the rotation and say if he's, because, again, what do you expect from your fifth starter or sixth starter? A guy who has a 4.5 to 5 ERA. You don't expect more than that. You expect the guy to give you innings, which I'm not sure Clay Holmes can do. When was the last time he pitched over 100 innings? In Pittsburgh. What was that, 4 years ago? So we don't know. Yeah. So, the problem with that whole situation when it comes to Clay Holmes, I can deal with it if Scott's there because, sure, Clay Holmes can stay in the rotation. I'm not expecting him to be, Seth Lugo. I mean, it would be great if he's Seth Lugo, but I'm not expecting that. Yeah. Clay Holmes is a guy who's pitched, 80, 86, 75, 80 innings over the last couple of seasons. I mean, even if he does pitch well, you still got to monitor his innings, which is another stupid thing about this rotation, is that almost every guy in your rotation, you have to monitor their innings because of their situations. Kodai Senga with injuries. McNeil hasn't pitched that many innings since in his career, since last year. And then you keep on going. Montas is a guy who can throw innings, but only 2 years ago, he's still working back from that injury he had 2 years ago, and it's still taking effect because he didn't pitch well last year. And then, you go with David Peterson. He's coming off hip surgery. So you're going to put more innings on all these guys. And I'm not sure if David Stearns is thinking this, but he's got to be aware of these inning situations that could become an issue. And that's why I think the Tanner Scott issue is part of the reason why this is coming up at this point. And because the Mets don't leak nothing. Why this got leaked out tells me that there's something going on more than Tanner Scott, but I think it's more closer than we think, in my opinion. Because sorry.
No, so what I was going to say is I don't necessarily think that David Stearns is actually actively thinking about limiting this rotation outside of Kodai Senga, because if he was, he wouldn't have built this rotation the way that it currently stands going into 2025.
Are we sure about that?
I'm pretty positive.
I don't know.
They didn't limit Sean Manaea or Luis Severino. They pitched damn near 180 plus innings for the first time in however long. They weren't worried about. They were on 1 year deals too. But anyway,
I don't think David Stearns is expecting to make the playoffs either. So
last year,
no.
You don't think David Stearns is expected to make the playoffs this year?
No. Last year.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying no. This year,
what are we talking
about? Last year, because he didn't care if these guys were going to, throw 175, 180 innings, because I can guarantee you that he didn't expect them to make the playoffs last year. And if they threw a ton of innings, I don't think he would think about keeping them anyway. Even though he did bring back Manaea, I don't think he thought about bringing them back. I truly believe that. Because it was such an evaluation year that I still believe that he got Manaea, he got Severino, he got a Harrison Bader for the exact reason that if they pitch well in the first half, he can trade them at the deadline, including Pete Alonso. I truly believe that was his thought process going into that. I know he says he believes in his team and blah, blah, blah. Look, we even kind of believed in his team with our season preview record, right? What was it? 84 wins for you, 86 for me, I think it was, or right? That was it?
I think so, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there, right? But it was on the border of a playoff team, right? So we kind of believed in him, but I think he was looking for the trade deadline. And when we were looking at making a run and it was coming to the deadline and we needed some help, he wasn't going to sell. The fan base would riot. So I think he went into the season not caring about their innings at all. Because I think that he was going to ship them out as soon as the deadline came, but he couldn't do it. So his plan probably got a whole twisted. And we talked about it. All these, prove it deals that were easily tradable. We talked about it during, before the season started. That was the big deal, that they can go either way. But clearly they were leaning towards trading these guys at the deadline. And then he couldn't do it because, well, they were in it. And now you got David Peterson that nobody expected to get what he gave us coming back from hip injury. But again, he pitched a decent amount of innings last year, but now you're talking about pitching him another 50 to 55, maybe even 60 more innings, along with Kodai Senga. Like, you have to limit his innings, but when you're in the hunt and you're going for it, and let's say by August, you're going to limit his innings when you need wins. Like, that's the issue that I continue to have. Why you need
Senga?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's valid. I think
Unless
I don't think anybody's on innings restrictions outside of Kodai Senga this year. I'm just gonna say that.
Well,
I don't think and in a 6-man rotation, if you are going to a 6-man rotation, that is the way to state that whatever happens you can't go to a 7-man rotation.
let's go to a 10. Fuck it. I mean, but honestly though, okay, let's because I'm still struggling to figure out where this 6-man rotation is coming from. Did we all counted, right? Let's see, we got Manaea, we got Senga, Peterson, Montas, Clay Holmes. Am I missing somebody?
Senga, Manaea. We're missing somebody, and I'm forgetting who it is now that we're on this.
Come on, guys, help us in the chat, man. It's a long day, man. You gotta help us out. Come on.
Manaea, Senga, Peterson, Montas,
Holmes, Griffin
who are we
Canning.
forgetting? No, it's not. No. It's not Griffin Canning. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Who are we missing? There ain't nobody. Oh, Tyler McGill?
I mean, yeah, I guess it'd be like Paul, I think it'd be Paul Blackburn.
Oh, all right, but he's not going to be ready until like mid-May.
No, I agree. Yeah. No, I agree.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like, we're going to a 6-man rotation because we're trying to protect their innings or give them an extra day so they can get those innings. But you got a 6-man that is barely a major leaguer. Blackburn is, but until you get him back, you're getting Griffin Canning and Tyler McGill for every 6th start. It's stupid. It's a stupid concept. Like that's another reason why I wanted, again, the offseason's not over. They might go after Luis Castillo or Dylan Cease. Who knows what's going on with the Padres, but we don't know. That is why the 6-man rotation doesn't make sense when you don't have a true ace, because you're pushing everybody up, and your 5th and 6th starter, what are we getting from them? There's nobody that can feel confident in a rotation that has Clay Holmes and a huge question mark as your 6th starter. Like, just to protect their innings and give everybody an extra day off to get the innings you need tells me your rotation you're not that confident in your rotation to begin with. Like, you don't go to a 6-man rotation because you're confident in a 6-man rotation. I'm sorry, you just don't.
I honestly think that there's plenty of time in this offseason to evaluate this. I'm not panicking about this outlook.
I'm done with the rotation. I'm not even talking. I don't even want to talk about it anymore because
I'm not panicking about it.
My whole hope and dreams for a rotation that at least had some type of ace is it for me. It's out the window. Like, give me Tanner Scott, make your bullpen better, bring back if you want to bring Alonso back, fine, I'm good with that. Or two outfielders if it's Santander and bring in Luis Arraez. I don't care at this point. Get better in other ways because the rotation to me is a joke. And maybe in June, somebody is going to replay that and say, hey, remember when you said this rotation is a joke and it's top 5 in the league? I have a hard time seeing that because I don't care how David Stearns, how much he believes in himself. There is no way, there is no team in baseball that goes to a 6-man rotation because their rotation or you're confident in your rotation going into the season. It's just not. What the 6-man rotation is telling me is that our rotation can't give you the innings we need with a 5-man rotation. So we're going to throw a scrub in there in the 6th man just to get the innings out of them. That's an issue. That is really an issue. And that's the way I see it. No, I'm not saying Manaea and Senga are a joke, but they're question marks. Manaea might be less of a question mark, but again, Manaea can't carry a whole rotation when there is no. You can't tell me Senga's going to be good when he didn't pitch last year. Until he pitches, because can he get through spring training before we talk about what he did in 2023? I don't care about 2023. That means nothing to me. Does anybody care about Sean Manaea's 2023 when he was a failed starter and went to the bullpen with the Giants? No, nobody cares about that. They talk about last year. So let's talk about last year with Kodai Senga. He pitched, 7 innings during the season, couple of innings in the bullpen, had a few decent moments, and got rocked in one of the other games. So it's too much of a question mark to tell me that that I'm not saying they're jokes, but you're going to a 6-man rotation. You're pitching your pitcher less every week. You're pitching him basically once a week. So Sean Manaea is going to pitch 4 times a month compared to maybe 5 times a month. When you need him to pitch more because he's better than everybody else you have. Like, I'm sorry, the confidence level is not there for me. I said it from the beginning. I don't care if they bring in Bregman or let's say they bring back 2 more bats, and the lineup's pretty damn good. They get Tanner Scott. The bullpen's good. I'm not giving this team the offseason an A because I think the rotation, you can't do that with your bullpen and the lineup and then half-ass a rotation and tell me you're confident going into the season because I can't be. The rotation scares the hell out of me. And the first thing everybody's going to complain about is the rotation. And then when the deadline comes and they don't get a starting pitcher because the Mets never get the guy they need in the trade deadline, find the time they did in their history for a long time they didn't, except for Yoenis Cespedes. And even that wasn't enough. They don't do it. They don't trade their prospects like that during the season. They just don't.
I'm gonna just say this. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it.
Somebody's going to click it 3 months from now. Somebody's going to be right.
Someone can click this right now and then tell me that I'm wrong. Let's say in this June swoon, if there is one this year, and then they can go ahead and tell me you remember in your January 9th stream that you did with Rob and how naive you were to the Mets needs and the rotation. I will allow you all to do that, and I'll stand on 10 toes if I'm wrong. I'm not worried about it whatsoever, but I will say in our moment right now, just trying to figure out who the 6th guy was, this is why I've been adamant, and I've been on record probably over a month ago stating that I wouldn't count out Jose Butto being that 6th guy in this rotation to start things off in 2025. I would not count it out.
Then you better get Tanner Scott.
You look at right, then you need 2 relievers instead of just 1, hopefully 2 higher end relievers. If the Mets go out, listen, if the Mets did this, rotation as is, Jose Butto is our 6th starter, they go get David Robertson and Tanner Scott, and you take care of the bats, I'm all fine with that. Let's start 2025 off and let's see where we go. I will say, look at the splits with Jose Butto. Don't let recency bias get in the way. He had just as good of numbers, and he actually probably had more steam coming in as a starter on this team than he did a reliever. Yes, I'll take him as a reliever all day long if that's what the Mets choose and they roll with Tyler McGill or Griffin Canning. Okay, whatever. I'd much rather see Jose Butto out there as our sixth starter than a Griffin Canning all day, every day. It's not even a competition between those two guys. So that's what I'll say. But if that happens, you are right, Rob. We would need two bullpen guys, presumably of a higher caliber.
Well, even if Butto does go into the rotation, say until Blackburn comes back and you throw Butto back in there in the bullpen, that would be fine. But again, it's still setting up the problem that persists because they didn't go out and get a top line starter. And I know people can kill me or, what's a top line starter nowadays? You know what's a top line starter? A guy that you can go out there every fifth day and can be a stopper during the losing streak. A guy that you can go out there and be confident that you can win a ball game when they take the mound. Now, McNeil can be that guy. I'm not saying he won't be. But again, he's going to be pitching once a week. Like, let's understand that for a second, right? When Griffin Cannon or Tyler McGill or even Jose Butto is probably only going to give you 5 innings, right? Gives you 5 innings and doesn't pitch well when it could have been Manaya's spot, because now what you're doing is Manaya, who's had a great season last year, every fifth day, now you're telling him, well, you know what? We're going to give you an extra day, even though he told you last year, especially during the later parts of the season, he didn't like extra days off. Remember that, Chris?
He didn't fizzled out, though. So who cares what he wants versus what he's comfortable with? He fizzled out.
So if he's not comfortable, that means he's just going to pitch well with the 6 man just because he's not comfortable.
But if we're saying that we need a top line starter and we're trying to say, oh, we're only going to see them every 6th day or every week instead of every 5th day, the top line starter that we would presumably get is going to go every 6th day as well. So he's going to be limited.
No, I don't believe that one bit. I think they've been talking about a 6-man rotation because they know they're not getting a top line starter. If you get a top line starter, you're not going to get a Corbin Burns and pitch him every 6th day. You're not going to get a Luis Castillo and pitch him every 6th day. Those guys don't like that.
How does that protect Kodai Senga then? How would that protect Kodai Senga? Because the only reason that we're doing the 6-man rotation is because of Kodai Senga.
Yeah, because they're counting on him too much. That's the issue.
So we're going to DFA him or what? He's on this roster.
No. How about Kodai Senga pitches every 5th day, and if you can't pitch like that, you shouldn't be in the major leagues. Go back to Japan.
Mean, listen.
Look, we babied him so much in 2023, but nobody cared because the team sucked.
See, and that's the way you're viewing. That's the way you're viewing this, and I get it. Like there could be some frustration level with Senga, but like, come on, like
we have to baby Senga and possibly hurt the rest of the rotation. That's basically never done a 6-man rotation before.
That is what it is, because guess what? We were all clapping and cheering when Kodai Senga got signed. And so now we have to live with whatever happens with Senga on the roster.
Sure, but again, we knew we had to baby him through the first year because obviously he has to adjust to the major leagues. He should have adjusted in 2023. 2024, his arm could be more healthier.
We signed him under the assumption and actually knowing in the back of our head that he had an injury history in Japan. We signed him knowing that. This is nothing new with Kodai. We knew that risk was always involved with him.
Sure, but again, we're going to have to live with his discrepancies because he can't pitch every 5th day. That's what it's telling me, because he got hurt based off of what? In spring training, what was it? Because he pitched too much the year before? Was it that? I know his injury concerns, that's not David Stern's fault. He didn't sign him. And we were all excited about getting Kodai Senga, including myself. But again, after 2023, you got to acclimate yourself, right? You Darvish did it. Everybody who comes in, Shohei Ohtani freaking did it for a while, right? He wasn't pitching every 6th day. You got to acclimate. You can't keep on getting babied here, because there's going to be a time, because we're going to make the playoffs. Is Kodai Senga even pitching more than once in any series? Like
So
it's silly.
solution though, we can talk about this, but what's the solution? Senga's here, he's under contract. There's some sort of opt out that I have to go back and refamiliarize
It's
myself
after
with the
this year, if
contract.
I'm not mistaken.
I think it is. I think it is after this year. But again, what's the solution? Like we can't just say Senga, you're not part of this team anymore. Like I think that's what
No, tell him to
like
grow a pair and act like a major league pitcher. Like,
we
I'm sorry, but this is the problem with baseball nowadays. They baby these guys so much that when they need them the most and they push them, they get hurt. That's the issue, right? We even seen it with the Mets last year. We seen it with Christian Scott. This guy was not ready to pitch every fifth day and give the innings the Mets needed. The guy got hurt. Right? They did it with Jose Buto, right? He broke down at the end of the year. Nunez, they asked so much for him, and he got hurt as well. Like this is a situation that we're pushing guys that know that can't do it at the moment. They know this, but they didn't have no choice. And again, they're leaving themselves no choice with Kodai Senga, regardless of who's in this rotation. They're leaving themselves. They're setting themselves up for a disaster. If Kodai Senga can't do what we expect him to do, why even bothering with him and paying him and telling him, oh, whoa, we're going to do a 6-man rotation because of Kodai Senga, but screw everybody else in the rotation that probably doesn't want to do it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like McNeil throughout his career, 5-man rotation, Montaz, even Peterson for that matter, right? You're screwing the rest of your rotation. Now, can it be beneficial? I would love to eat my words, Chris. 100%. Me and you always talk about this, right? We love to eat our words. We anything that we talk negative about a team, we want them to do the exact opposite so they can shut us up. But it seems like they're setting themselves up for a situation that might not work out very well. Like we babied the hell out of Kodai Senga in 2023, and right off the bat in spring training, he gets hurt and he doesn't pitch the whole season basically.
Okay, so what I'm going to say here is that we're treating Kodai Senga as, again, at the top of his game and what he could be for the New York Mets in 2025. Under this assumption and the way that we're talking about him and impacting the rest of the rotation, who is that impacting? Because guess what? At his worst, Kodai Senga, if he's healthy, again, we're talking about if, but
sure,
if he's healthy, he's a starting pitcher 2 or 3 on this team, even if they do get an ace. He's not some scrub.
No.
So we can't you know what I'm saying? Like,
no,
we
I
have
understand.
to accommodate to him either way.
No, you don't. Because I'm telling you, Chris, if they would have got Corbin Burns, or if they still get Luis Castillo or Dylan Cease, they're not gonna, suit Kodai Senga, give him a 6-man rotation, and they're gonna say, "Oh, Corbin," or "Hey, Luis Castillo, I know you never done it in your career, but we're gonna make you pitch every 6th day because this guy who didn't pitch last year, and we don't know if he's gonna be healthy, but we're trying everything we can to make him be healthy. But you have to go every 6th day because of him." You know what Luis Castillo is gonna say? "Why'd you trade for me then? So I can pitch once a week?" It's a silly concept because everything has to go right with Kodai Senga, and leave health aside. Even with health, the guy needs to be pampered. Like, how can you go through a season with a guy that needs everything to go? This is similar to Jacob deGrom for a couple of years when he was going through the issue where he had to be 100% right for him to go out there on the mound. That's the way Kodai Senga feels to me. Even though Kodai Senga and Jacob deGrom's in different fields, Kodai Senga has to have everything go right for him to get on that mound. And who knows if he's going to pitch well. Now, if he's healthy, he can probably pitch well. But I think we're catering to Kodai Senga way too much, and we're forgetting about everybody else. I think we really are.
Who is everybody else, though? That's what I'm saying.
Everybody who's on this rotation right now.
Well, you just said that you're not confident in them. So who cares? I'm taking Senga above Montas. I'm taking Senga above Clay Holmes. I'm taking Senga above probably David Peterson, unless David Peterson is able to replicate what he did last season. So what I'm saying is that we don't have an ace, so we can't make this argument. Right now with what we have, you have to go with the 6-man rotation because screw everybody else. Senga is going to make or break this rotation and the success of it in 2025. That's the cards that we're dealt with. We can't change that. That's
And
what
they
I'm
put that on themselves.
Stearns did not. Senga was not a Stearns signing. Stearns did
No,
not
but
put
he
that
took
on.
over and now he's working with Kodai Senga's,
What
situation.
demands? I don't think Senga's
I don't
demanding
think it's demands.
anything.
Here's the thing. Stearns knows that Kodai Senga can't pitch every 5th day. That's an issue within itself. Like, let's hope he's healthy, but we don't even know that. Like, is he throwing a ball yet? Because last time about 3 weeks ago, is he throwing a ball? Because he wasn't 3 weeks ago.
Before we move on to Luis Arraez, because we are
Yes.
on 50 minutes of this rotation, I will say, Rob, to open this up, and you've actually been saying this a lot. You are stating that David Peterson is a question mark, dealing with the injury and just seeing if he's going to replicate what he did last season in half a season. And you also said Sean Manaea is a question mark because how does he follow up a season where he pitched 182 innings when he hasn't done that, if ever, at least since his Oakland Athletics days? If that's the case, why are we so down on this 6-man rotation as it is if we're already going into the season from your perspective of Manaea and Peterson having longevity issues? Why is it so bad we're going to a 6-man rotation? That seems like a positive for me.
Not when they haven't done it.
Okay, so the flip side is forcing a 5-man rotation and just hoping that Manaea and Peterson are able to keep the longevity. That's the flip side of things.
Why do we assume an extra day off is going to make them better? Like, great, they can pitch innings, but they might suck doing it.
There's a lot of what ifs, but that's the same thing
point.
of why
There's
they were
too
trying
many
to do
what
that with
ifs.
Christian Scott.
If you had a better rotation, you wouldn't have to worry about this because there's too many question marks. They're doing it. That's all I'm saying. There's too many question marks is the only reason why they're doing it. That's the issue.
I thought that they were doing it well. I thought
because they can't be doing it because they're very confident in this rotation. I'm sorry.
I still think if they were confident in this rotation, they would still be doing it, at least for the first half of the season. I still think they would be.
Well, we shall see. All right. So number 2. All right. Only an hour. That's great. Hey, it's an important topic, right?
Important.
It is. All right. So let's get to the second topic. Mets in on a rise. Oh, technically in on a rise. Andy Martino talked about, was it Andy Martino? Yeah, it was Andy Martino. Yeah. That, when Andy Martino says something positive about the Mets, listen, the negative stuff is always fake. We all know that it's a lie. But when it's positive, there's teeth to this a little bit. That the Mets could pivot. Now, this is probably, I guess we have to throw Alonso into this situation too, right? Considering the fact that if the Mets don't sign Alonso, could they go after trade for Luis Arraez and go with Anthony Santander as well, or a Bregman, and they have a combination of 2 different bats in the lineup, which I think would be great additions. Actually, you get an average guy at the top of this order to get on base for the big guys. It's a huge deal. I think the Mets could do this. Now, I don't know how long they can wait, and I think that's the issue. That again, this Alonso situation is frustrating because not only is Alonso getting tied up here and having his hands tied with him not making a decision, he's handcuffing the Mets a little bit because the Mets probably would like to pivot, but they can't. Like if they get Alonso, they probably don't have to worry about Anthony Santander most likely, or even Bregman for that matter, or another. Maybe they could still go after Arraez, but the Mets are giving us so many options. When it comes to, maybe Bregman, maybe Santander, and even Santander was in a topic with John Morosi on MLB Network about a couple hours ago in regards that, the Mets could be a sneaky jump in last minute for Santander, but this all relies on what Alonso is going to do, Chris. And with Arraez, I think you should get him no matter what, to be quite honest with you. And, Arraez, you can make him your DH, to be quite honest. He's not very good defensively. But what are your thoughts on the Mets could be in on Luis Arraez?
I don't know if I need Jeff McNeil and Arraez in the same lineup. I don't know if I
I don't
need
think
that.
Jeff McNeil will be here though.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna get Luis Arraez and you're telling me that Jeff McNeil gets traded elsewhere, oh, I'm gonna do that 100%. I mean, not even a question. And then you can work in Luis Angel Acuna more because he's got the glove, and then yeah, you can DH Luis Arraez if you wanted to. He has, over 70 games of first base experience collectively between the Marlins and San Diego Padres last season. That's a perfect scenario, but I think that the first domino that has to fall is Jeff McNeil not being here. Now, Jeff McNeil wouldn't be able to go back into San Diego in that deal, unfortunately, because with the Padres, their whole debacle and what's going on in San Diego right now with that ownership group and the lawsuit that's going on or whatever, you know, they're trying to offload payroll, which is the only reason why they'd want to at least even trade Luis Arraez in the first place. Now, we've also heard, I think, Nightingale, and when we talk about Pete Alonso, I do want to talk about John Heyman's latest article as well, because he kind of was throwing shots at Bob Nightingale as well. These reporters are all throwing shots. Like Nightingale's throwing shots at Martino, Heyman's throwing shots at Nightingale. It's a whole revolving door, and it's just absolutely crazy. But um, they're trying to offload payroll, and Arraez just reached an arbitration agreement with the Padres for $14 million today, I believe. And McNeil has 2 more years left on his deal before that club option hits. For the Mets or whoever other team that ends up with McNeil is able to exercise. So there's no way the Padres are getting rid of $14 million just to take on an additional 30 from the New York Mets, unless the Mets are paying
They
20
could do that.
plus
They could do that.
plus of that remaining 30 just to get rid of Jeff McNeil. They could do it, but I'm not sure they would want to at that point because Luis Arraez at the end of the day, I mean, with all due respect to his average and him consistently,
That's
batting
all he is.
300, that's all he does.
Yeah, correct.
He doesn't hit doubles. He
But
doesn't hit home runs.
if you can get like a Jeff McNeil type, like Jeff McNeil, show some power, hit some doubles, but Jeff McNeil is a shell of himself. If Arraez can bat 330 in front of Juan Soto and Vientos or somebody else, let's say Alonso as well, he's going to get driven in a lot more. Like, you need guys to get on base, and I think that was a big downfall for the Mets as well early on in the season. They couldn't get guys on either when you actually got a hit or got a home run. So I think that would be a thing where Jeff McNeil was so crucial to this team last year, and he was a big failure that it hurt the team early on. Like it took until Iglesias got here to get that that veteran presence in the lineup, and then it started to turn around. Jeff McNeil was a big cause of why the Mets were bottomed out early on in the season. So look, I'm not saying Arraez is a really good player. He's an average guy, and that's it. He doesn't hit doubles. Occasionally hit one down the line. He can break out a triple every now and then and beat out a triple. He shows no power. But again, if you can, let's say Alonso comes back, right? Let's say it's Alonso and let's say Profar, right? And we'll get to this in a little bit, but let's say we get 2 more bats. And you can put Arraez as the DH because he makes sense as a DH, right? He sucks in the field. He's not a very good defender. He's okay at second base. He's not a good first baseman. So, he could play a little bit of third, but again, you're not going to do that. If you can avoid him playing the field 95% of the time, you can bat him anywhere in the lineup if you want. You can bat him ninth if you really wanted to.
I was going to say that ninth is the best spot for him.
Correct. Turn over because he has a good chance of getting on base to turn over the lineup. That is huge. Something that the Mets had problems with, the majority of the year. Let's be honest about that. So, do I think it's possible that we can get him? See, well, here we go again. It's just a situation with Alonso. Like this Alonso, I think is holding up a lot of situations that the Mets can pivot to, as we'll talk about in the rest of the topics. What are the issues? Do you think they're going to do anything prior to Alonso? I guess that's the question I have to ask you when it comes to Arraez or anybody else. Because it seems like they're not. Like they haven't. It's been Soto and let's talk about Alonso for a month.
So you're saying, are they going to make a move for another bat before Alonso? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, in regards to the next couple of topics, I would guess.
I think it would be. I don't think it's going to be for Arraez. I don't think that's truthful at
Oh
all.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I don't think. I mean, again, I would take Arraez on this team, but I think Jeff McNeil has to find another home, and I think that Arraez. Again, I don't know if that's the best fit for the Mets. With all due to respect to his offensive
Sure.
game, I think that I would take him on this team, but I don't need McNeil and Arraez on this team at the same time because they're kind of one and the same offensively at their peaks. Even though McNeil has a little bit more power potential than Arraez does. What I will say is that yeah, I think the Mets would make a move if they deem fit because they were ready to make one for Teoscar Hernandez even before Pete Alonso's situation, played out the way that it did. They were
Sure.
trying to sway Teoscar Hernandez away from LA before he inevitably went
Good
back.
point.
I
Good
think
point.
that if they do find a deal for Jesse Winker, or if they do identify Jurickson Profar, who I'm a big fan of, if the Mets got Jurickson Profar and Pete Alonso to round out this offseason, yeah, it's not going to be as sexy as Alonso and Bregman or Alonso and Santander. I don't think that's realistic, to be honest with you. But I think that, if it's Profar, who I think is a little bit more of a fit and more well-rounded than a Jesse Winker. I know the fans love Jesse Winker. I understand that. I also love Jesse Winker. But to put this team at its peak defensively and offensively and getting an everyday type player in Jurickson Profar along with Pete Alonso, I would take that all day long. So yeah, if a situation presented itself for the Mets to get a bat before Alonso makes his decision, yeah, I think the Mets would do it 100%.
Okay, so in regards to the next topic, when it comes to the Mets want two outfielders, it seems like that has been their plan ever since the Teoscar Hernandez 2-year offer was reported that the Mets were in on them, and obviously, you know, I guess you can put the two topics together, but let's talk about the two outfield situation. Obviously, a big deal is Brandon Nimmo, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But and you know what, we might as well just throw that topic and just do double time here with both of these topics. So we'll go back and forth here. With the Brandon Nimmo situation, that is there any baseball activity? Like, we still don't know. Last time we heard about it, he wasn't doing anything, no running at all, and definitely not no much baseball activity on the field. Is it? And we talked about this, right? With the Teoscar Hernandez offer, are the Mets really trying to take Nimmo out of the field as much as possible because of the plantar fasciitis that doesn't go away? It sticks around, and other injuries that Nimmo has had over the last couple of seasons, and it clearly hindered him. It clearly hurt the Mets, when he couldn't basically swing a bat in the playoffs. Like, that was a huge deal. Do you think the two outfield, I guess, plan, I guess you can say, is because Brandon Nimmo, and they know something that we don't in regards to him playing the field and with his feet, Chris, because it has to be brought up, and I don't know if much people are even talking about this enough. And you brought it up. I was talking about it a couple of streams ago where Nimmo might not even play the field much. What do you think? Because I think it has to be a topic, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I mean, listen, I tossed up a poll on my channel's community tab this morning talking about how many games we can realistically see Brandon Nimmo in the DH spot, at least as a hybrid DH, as the Mets are trying to figure out what they're going to do. Santander is not really a possibility for them this offseason. I know JP Morosi was talking about Santander on MLB Network. It seemed like a very, very solidified option B if Pete Alonso doesn't work out for the New York Mets. But again, you can have that lefty bat being Nimmo at the DH spot. Let's not forget that we've also heard the reports, and I know that nobody wants to talk about this, and we kind of want to just forget about it. But just a couple of days ago, weeks ago was Teoscar Hernandez. After that, we've seen some interest in Jock Peterson before he went to the Rangers, and now it's Alex Verdugo. They are interested in Alex Verdugo, or at least talking about a potential Alex Verdugo signing. And I get it. I don't want Alex Verdugo either, so don't get it twisted. I saw Rob just hang his head when I mentioned the name Verdugo. I don't want the guy either. He's coming off of an abysmal season. All of his offensive metrics are coming down, 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 down since 2020. He's only 28 years old, to be fair, and he still provides some gap to gap abilities with the doubles that he hits, at least in the last 4 seasons. But outside of that, I would rather stay away. But you can't be naive to the fact that that's another corner outfielder that plays elite defense that the Mets are at least quote unquote interested in with an already crowded outfield as it is. Jose Siri, they just reached an arbitration agreement for $2.2 million with today. The New York Mets did. Juan Soto, Starling Marte, right? Brandon Nimmo. Like, where's Nimmo going to go? The corner outfielders, unless you're seriously thinking about DHing Juan Soto, which I highly doubt the Mets are going to do on an everyday basis, what are the Mets' plans in being involved with all these outfielders? Now, I get it. Teoscar Hernandez is a little bit of a unique situation because you could DH Teoscar Hernandez. He doesn't need to play the field. But Verdugo, you're not DHing Verdugo. You're not
No,
doing that.
Chris, I think there's concern about Nimmo within the organization. I really think there is, because if he hasn't started baseball activity yet a month before spring training, they can't feel confident in him playing every day right now, and playing, say, 50 something games and be healthy. Like, maybe they're really concerned about these feet or whatever is ailing him. It was the plantar fasciitis, but whatever else might be ailing him right now. Maybe they're really concerned, because you don't go after two outfielders when you bring in Siri and bring in Juan Soto, and then you could sign Teoscar Hernandez, and now you're going after Verdugo. You're talking about Winker, like, even Anthony Santander for that matter. Like, there's too many outfielders. They're looking at Jock Peterson. Right, they're looking at too many outfielders. They were in on Jock Peterson. They offered a contract to Teoscar Hernandez. I'm assuming they offered a Jock Peterson a contract, but it wasn't, I guess, enough, or he didn't want to come here. So in a month, they offered 2 deals to outfielders that can most likely play outfield every single day. There's a reason why they're doing that. Like, it's not the worry about Juan Soto defensively. Center field is going to be patrolled by either Siri or Tyrone Taylor. They have to be concerned about Brandon Nimmo, because it doesn't make much sense. Like, how many outfielders are you going to have in your roster unless you're going to be playing somebody over somebody else?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think of, like, even Jock Peterson again has that, and I 100% agree with you, because I think the actual notion that we've been talking about and this Mets fan base collectively has been talking about, unless you've just been under a rock, is that, Brandon Nimmo has injury concerns. I mean, he does. This goes back years. Last year's no different. He played through an immense amount of pain, and it was very evident in the playoffs. He is going to transition. And this is where the Mets are going to kind of have a problem, because if you're talking about Juan Soto potentially transitioning to a DH at some point in his career, Brandon Nimmo is going to be the first guy in line to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just taking a beating in all sorts of facets in terms of the injury category. So listen, man, I don't know. I don't think Nimmo's going to be a full-fledged DH in 2025. I'm not saying that. Do I think we see a handful of games of him DHing? Yeah, 100%. But I really got to think, starting in 2026 and beyond, the Mets could have some doubts of his ability being an everyday outfielder for the New York Mets. Now, where these other guys fit into that, given those are presumably short-term deals, you're not handing anything past a 1 or 2 year deal out to Alex Verdugo. Same thing with Teoscar Hernandez with the 2-year contract offer that they sort of gave him. But you also have prospects coming through the wings. And maybe that's a scenario that they're waiting for, and they're just hoping to land one of these outfielders as a stopgap option until one of those prospects shows themselves and proves themselves. It's a whole situation, and honestly, this is where kind of this Brandon Nimmo contract, even though that I am expecting him to have a lot better of a offensive season than he did in 2024, I think he turns it around with the bat, but him being limited potentially in year 3 or 4 of this contract and not being able to actually play the outfield is going to do a lot of harm positionally for the New York Mets, especially if they have to bring on a guy like Pete Alonso to a long-term deal. I'm not saying that's going to happen because they're not willing to budge on that as of yet. By the way, I haven't talked about Pete Alonso yet. I'm not sure if we will. I know we're sick of the Pete Alonso talk. I get it, but I think it's necessary. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's becoming a little bit concerning. Again, I'm not going to press the panic button right now in 2025 and telling you all that, Brandon Nimmo is not going to be an everyday starting outfielder, but we have to start having these conversations about what the Mets plan actually is for Brandon Nimmo as an everyday outfielder. I do agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And Brandon Nimmo, he did say that after the season was over, he was going into a walking boot. So again, I have plantar fasciitis in my left foot. I've had it since college ball. It's not fun. And I didn't play the outfield. I played third base. And I wasn't moving around like an outfielder. And I'm not an elite athlete like a major leaguer. All right. It hurts. Like I feel it just working every day on my feet. Like doing that in the outfield 162 games a year or 150 games a year, constantly practicing, constantly hitting, running, all that stuff that they do on an everyday basis. It's gonna ache. It's gonna hurt. So that's where I think this whole two outfield scenario is probably more likely than a Luis Arraez or that's why I think the Mets want to get this Alonso thing situated so they can focus on that. And again, this is why the Alonso thing. This is why I'm kind of mad at the Mets, even though I'm on board with them not giving Alonso a long-term deal. And I'm also mad at Pete Alonso. Like I'm in both aspects in regards to let's bring up Alonso at this point right now when it comes to that. And I guess we'll just throw it over to the kind of rapid fire section before we ask our real questions. But the Pete Alonso situation, because the Mets are kind of giving them the short end of the stick here when it comes to contract offers, which again I'm on board with. But I'm also mad at the Mets that they're letting this linger and basically leaving that contract up in the air for Alonso the grab at whatever point. Just offer him the fourth year for 120 and see if he takes it and just get it over with, because the Mets can't have Alonso stay out here until February 1st and have Santander and Bregman and Profar, because these guys like Profar or Verdugo, if you're looking at him, those guys are going to come off the board rather quickly, very soon. And if you're looking at those 1-2 year deal type of guys, and you don't want to give Bregman or Santander 4, 5, 6 years, you're shit out of luck at that point. So like that's why it's like I understand the Mets want to give 3 for 90, but offer him 4 for 120, right? It's not the end of the world. Do it. Like just so it can get resolved and you can worry about other parts of your roster, because it seems like they're going very slowly in the process of everything else because of the Alonso situation. Even though they did the Teoscar Hernandez thing, the Jurickson Profar thing, fine, but it seems like they slowed down their way of doing things, or maybe they're not, but it seems like they're slowing things down because of the Alonso situation. Even though they got around $76 million before they hit that third threshold, luxury tax threshold, and they could actually sign 3 $20 million players if they wanted to and still be under the payroll they had last year. Like think of that for a second. Now, could they still do it? I mean, don't hold your breath, but I do wonder if the Alonso situation is the reason why they're slow rolling the rest of the players that they could be involved in, even though they might not be, but it seems like that, Chris.
It could be, and I know you mentioned 4 for like 120 or something like that. Just get it done. I released a video on my channel this afternoon around 3:30 talking about the latest statement from John Heyman. He actually said, Bob Nightingale's report of Scott Boras going around and comparing Pete Alonso to, the 9-year deal of Prince Fielder. There's no shred of truth to that, according to John Heyman. But what he did say is that the Mets and Pete Alonso are far apart on years, and that Pete Alonso wants at least a 6-year deal, at least a 6-year deal. Could that be John Heyman and Scott Boras, teaming up and trying to get the Mets to move off of 3 years into the 4th year or 5th year category? Maybe it could be 100%. But if that report is true, and if this isn't really a negotiation sort of scheme, and this is actually what Scott Boras and Pete Alonso are holding out hope for in a 6-year deal, we're going to be waiting here a good while, because guess what? The Mets are not doing 6 years, and neither is any team in this league. Because as we've both said, myself and you, Rob, countless of times, if Pete Alonso even had a 5-year offer on the table right now,
He'd be
even a
gone.
5-year offer, he'd be gone.
Yeah.
He'd be gone.
Now, I do worry a little bit about the Angels because Artie Moreno is a guy that can just come out of nowhere, just like he did with Anthony Rendon years back, where he just came out of nowhere and just says, okay, we're going to give you, what was it, 8 years or something like that, 7 years. Like, he could do that for Pete Alonso, especially when he gets itchy, and we know we don't like Steve Cohen. So that could be a thing right there. But I'd be shocked if that happens. But here's the thing. But that's the issue that I heard this, that the years are far apart. That has been widely reported multiple times now, that Alonso wants at least 6 years, and the Mets obviously gave him 3 years. I don't even know if they want to go to 4 years. I don't know, but maybe that all that John Heyman and Boris talk coming out of John Heyman's reports is trying to get the Mets up to at least 4 years, maybe 5 or 4 years with a club option or a player option for a 50 or whatever it might be. I think we know by now that David Stearns doesn't care what they spill out to the media. Like, he believes in what he believes in, and he's not going to change it for anybody. Now, that could hurt him. That could, again, it's yet to be determined, but that could hurt him. Yeah. And that's the issue by leaving that. If that offer is what it is and they're not going any further, because it's been 3 weeks now since that offer has come out, and nothing's changed. They barely spoke, according to a couple of reports. Like, it's just lingering out there, that offer. That's why I think the Mets just say, you know what, Pete, take this deal or it's off the table by Sunday morning, because we're moving on. Because they have to. At some point, you have to, right? You can't continue to play this game with Pete Alonso and Scott Boras. But here's the issue: Scott Boras also has Bregman and Santander, so he can play that game with them too. But
maybe the Mets are content. Maybe the Mets are content with moving Vientos over, and maybe they would rather have Pete Alonso, but they are content with just going in the internal route.
Completely on third base too?
Well, this is where I was going to bring up my rapid fire question of, do you think Bregman is still in play for the New York Mets?
God, I hope so, because look, I'm all on board with giving the young guys a chance to play. If you're not trading them, you might as well try to play them.
Yeah.
But again, who's going to be? Is it going to be Mauricio? Is it going to be Beatty?
Beatty.
I can't wait to see Beatty on opening day. well, we haven't traded Beatty yet, so something's going on with that one too. But that's the issue. Like, that's too many question marks at that point. You're hoping Vientos can be a decent first baseman, which I think he could be. He played enough in the minors to do so. But Beatty didn't show you anything spectacular at third base, if that's the case. Mauricio is an athlete. I think he can do it, no problem. But again, it's an injury concern. We got to see if he can come back and play to his capabilities that we expect. Acuna is not a third baseman. He's more of a second baseman or shortstop. So that's kind of out of the question. So I'm okay with moving Vientos to first base. But I think if you move Vientos to first base, it better be for Bregman. It better not be for Mauricio. Because even though I'm very excited about Mauricio, I can't go into a season not knowing if Mauricio is as good as we think he can be. That's too many question marks around Juan Soto, in my opinion, when it comes to the lineup as well, because I just don't know. Like, maybe Mauricio could be a Vientos type and hit 27 home runs, right? He got that vibe around him like Vientos did. Like, Vientos wasn't going to be denied success. Mauricio seems like the same way, but can he be that good? If he is, then you're saving a hell of a lot of money. But I don't know, man. I'm okay with Vientos. I'm sorry.
Me too, but I agree with you 100%. Mauricio is just too big of a question mark. If you have really big aspirations this year, relying on Mauricio to be an everyday player right off the bat for you is a little bit of it's a big ask, to be honest. I'd honestly rather see him if he's going to make the roster, which I'm not too confident that he will, to open up the season, right? I can see a scenario where they just put him back down in AAA and see how he does, and maybe treat him the same way they treated Mark Vientos. Even though we were all calling for Mark Vientos from the start last year, it would actually make sense in this scenario for Mauricio. But even then, the best solution here, is if Vlad Guerrero Jr. is completely out of the equation, which I, again, am not buying hype into. I understand that that's an ongoing situation within itself, as is this merry-go-round of positional, combinations that we can deploy in our minds as Mets fans. Let's say, Vlad Guerrero is not an option. The best solution you have at this point to build the most competitive roster is quite literally bringing Pete Alonso back,
Yeah.
putting Vientos back at third base, and then finding a DH. And you know what? I would be open to having Mauricio be sort of a platoon DH at that point too, because I do believe in his bat. I don't know if you can believe and buy into his abilities at third base. He's got a cannon of an arm. And this is the same issue that Vientos had at some points in 2024, fielding wise, is that they have big frames and their footwork is a cause of concern. Now, I will say, with the way that Ronnie Mauricio looked at second base at points when he got brought up, he looked pretty good for a big body like that. But like, man, I don't know how that's going to translate to third base. I've heard some murmurs about, the Mets being open to adding another veteran infielder. Maybe they bring back a Jose Iglesias. I don't know, man. It's getting to a point where we can toss out, even with the limited options, we can toss out probably 10 different combinations. And it's kind of like pick your poison at that point. It's frustrating. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the Vladimir Guerrero thing is more of an organization thought process more than anything else. And if Pete Alonso takes a 3-year deal, great. We'll DH him when we get Vladdy next year. Like it seems like they don't care with the Pete Alonso situation, because I'm telling you, the same way I believe they don't mind moving Vientos to first base, the same reason I think they don't mind moving Pete Alonso to DH the following season if they get Vlad Guerrero, because the Mets are going after Vlad Guerrero regardless if Pete Alonso's on his team or not. I think that's a guarantee. There's one thing that David Stearns does not care about. You are playing where we tell you to play, right? Unfortunately, Pete Alonso was not versatile on the field. He plays first base and that's it. You're going to DH if you get Vlad Guerrero Jr., right? Everybody else in this lineup, go across. Or whoever the Mets are looking at, the Verdugo, Teoscar Hernandez, these guys, Verdugo plays two corner outfield positions, right? Teoscar Hernandez can play all three outfield positions. Everybody they're looking at, Luis Arraez can play first, second, a little bit of third, right? Look at the Mets in general. McNeil can play the outfield, second base. Vientos, third base, first base. Everybody in the outfield can play all three positions except for Soto, who could play both corner outfielders. One thing David Stearns likes is versatility. If you don't have versatility, he isn't your friend. I'll tell you that right now. And that's the big reason why I think Alonso, or at least David Stearns, don't want to give Alonso a long-term deal because he doesn't like his flexibility. And if you can get him on 3 years, even if there's no opt-outs, you can easily move Pete Alonso to DH and go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They're leaving that open. They're clearly not giving a long-term contract to Pete Alonso because of the Vladimir Guerrero possible trade possibility in the offseason, maybe even at the deadline. But definitely they're going after him next season, because there's no other reason why not to give Pete Alonso a long-term or at least a 5-6 year deal if you're not thinking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Maybe.
Which throws a wrench into the whole Nimmo DH discussion at that point if they end up with Alonso and Vlad. I don't know if they I don't I don't know.
Yeah,
I ran out of answers at this point.
It kind of at that point you're making your team better. I mean, you could put Soto, Alonso, Guerrero, Lindor, Vientos. It's like, all right,
On
come on.
paper, I
Like
mean,
Nimmo can be in a wheelchair running around left field. Nobody gives a damn. Like honestly,
oh
like I don't
man.
want to say anything, but seriously, like you could score like 15 runs a ball game and you'll be fine. But yeah, I think it's very interesting to think of that process. But there's no other reason why the Mets are not giving him a longer term, Pete Alonso, a long term offer. That's the only other reason why I can think of. I don't believe any of that nonsense saying that, oh, he's not going to age well. I don't believe that one bit that the Mets believe that. I think that they're looking at a 25-year-old. Next year, he'll be 26. A guy who's 4 years younger or 5 years younger, or 4 years younger than 5 years younger than Pete Alonso, who is a better defensive first baseman. He's not going to have the same amount of power, but guess what, guys? The RBIs are right there. The average is better. Vladimir Guerrero gets his RBIs other than the home run. He'll hit you 30 home runs, but he also gives you the RBIs that Pete Alonso can give you, where we know Pete Alonso gets the majority of his RBIs from home runs. Vladimir Guerrero is the better player. If anybody believes otherwise, you're not paying attention, right? Vladimir Guerrero career average is 288. Even if he bats between 270 and 290, it's a hell of a lot better than Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is a pure power hitter. That's it. He doesn't do anything else very well with the bat anymore. He hasn't done it since 2022, basically. And even then, the clutch numbers weren't there much. Again, just go back to Chris's video that he did breaking down Pete Alonso's clutch numbers throughout the years. Not very good. It's been an issue throughout his career. The Mets know this. And if they can get Alonso and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and work with these guys, because you know what? The Dodgers do it. The Dodgers get Mookie Betts. How many positions Mookie Betts has played? He's one of the best players in baseball. They're not afraid to move guys around as long as they get the best player. The Mets can do the same exact thing. And Steve Cohen talked about being East Coast Dodgers. That's how you do it. There is no feelings here, right? Pete Alonso could be butthurt. Who cares? Do you want to win as a team? Which is another thing that I don't think Pete Alonso is all in for, to be quite honest with you, right? He doesn't want to DH because he likes to play first base. But if the team gets better by getting Vladimir Guerrero Jr., would Pete Alonso be okay being a DH? Or is he going to complain about it? Are you a team player or not? Because that would be telling if the Mets actually do that. The only reason the Mets give him a short-term deal and haven't gave him any remnants of a long-term deal this offseason is 100% telling me they're going after Vladimir Guerrero in any way, shape, or form. Maybe not in a trade, but definitely next year in free agency.
And maybe Pete Alonso knows that in the back of his mind, and he doesn't want to make that move because again, if he's signing a short-term deal, and if he's just going to be used as a DH, that's going to impact him in the future endeavors for another contract, right? I mean, you're limiting him at that point to just being a DH instead of that quote unquote versatility he would have as a first baseman. So my rapid fire question to you,
Yes,
I do have to head out of here in just a second, but my rapid fire question to you, and I feel I feel a little bit silly even asking this, but I've seen too many people even talk about this to the point where I'm like, okay, let me just hear the no, maybe. I don't know if you're gonna say no, but let me just hear what you have to say about this. I think that this is kind of ridiculous, but I don't know. Let's play this out. If the Mets are adamant, as you said, about pursuing Vlad Guerrero Jr. next offseason. Again, not this offseason, not via trade, but as a free agent. They have it in the back of their mind. We want to prioritize Vlad over Pete Alonso. Would you be willing to just let Pete walk and just sign the last stopgap, first baseman available on this market in Anthony Rizzo? That's the kicker. It wasn't going to be easy.
Not Anthony Rizzo. All right.
I
Our
agree.
pitchers don't cover first base. He's not running to the bag. I don't need Anthony Rizzo playing first base for the Mets. Like, no. Like,
I agree. It's a no for me too.
Like, put Jeff McNeil at first base. I'd rather see that. Like, God, no. No. Like, if Pete Alonso's not on his team, they better move Vientos to first base and get Bregman. Like it's just that simple. Like that's the only scenario that makes me feel good about that.
Yeah.
So no Rizzo, right?
I'm
I don't want to
glad
see.
you said that.
Yeah, I don't want
I'm
to see a
glad you
Yankee
said that.
15 in a Mets uniform. I just don't.
I just saw way too many people on social media and
Yeah.
in the comments talking about Anthony Rizzo. I don't need any part of Anthony. I'd almost rather just run it with Mauricio at third base every day and just show me what he's got and just move Vientos over to first base. Give me that over giving Anthony Rizzo any sort of, you know, it's just any consideration at that point too. Someone that we haven't talked about in a while is Nolan Arenado. That's a great point here by Q. I heard a report that Arenado's willing to be more extensive in the way that he approaches his no trade clause in terms of, and I see that Soto jersey in the back, by the way. That's awesome. Mine's still
Finally
on
got it
back order.
after a month.
I'm still waiting 2 weeks for mine to come in the mail. But yeah, listen, I'm still hearing some things about Nolan Arenado too. There's some murmur about the Red Sox being involved in their whole situation with Tristan Cassis and trying to get more pitching. You talk about pitching and the need for pitching. They've got Crochet, Bueller, and they want more. That's pretty solid, and they're addressing that need. But yeah, that's all I got, man. It's been a good stream. Do you have any questions for me, or we can wrap
Yeah, I
this
got a
up?
simple one now. The Mets going to sign Pete Alonso. I know that's
Yes.
actually a tough question, but
It's a tough question, but I'm going yes. I've been very adamant all offseason long, and with the lack of other offers that he presumably has and the lack of other competitors out there for Pete Alonso right now, I think he's going to end up in the Mets uniform. Wouldn't be shocked if it's a 4-year deal. They come in the middle between that 3-year deal and maybe the 5 or 6 years that he wants right now. No matter what the AAV is, it doesn't really matter. 4 years, opt-outs in between to give him that option to go back onto the market if and when I'm going to speak it into existence. The Mets go after Vladdy next offseason.
yeah, I agree with you. I think they're all going to sign Pete Alonso, and I don't think it has anything to do with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Going after him or not. I think they will regardless. So, all right, guys. So, episode 24 of Mets Hot Stove in the books, nearly an hour and a half into another hot stove with no moves. So, we get to talk an hour and a half. Maybe when there's moves, we might have a 2-hour show. You never know. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning into the Mets Hot Stove Show. We will be doing any breaking news popping up live whenever we actually can. And, of course, the Hot Stove are going to happen probably either Saturday or Sunday. And, whatever videos we post over the next couple of days. With that said, guys, have a great night. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. And we'll see you next time on the Hot Stove Show. Good night, guys.
Let's go Mets.
Dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but heart steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Critters from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Come back,